They found the letter in 1998, buried beneath the floorboards of a burned farmhouse outside Aachen, Germany. It was written in English, stained with mud and something darker. The first line read, "If you're reading this, then I'm already dead, and the truth died with me." But the truth didn't die. It was just waiting. This is the story of Captain James Hargrove and Oberleutnant Friedrich Weiss, two men who weren't supposed to meet, two men who made a deal that violated every rule of war, and two men who carried a secret so dangerous that speaking it out loud could have gotten them both executed. March 1945. The war in Europe was dying, but it was dying slowly, violently, like a wounded animal refusing to surrender. The American Third Army had pushed deep into Western Germany, and the roads were clogged with refugees, deserters, and the skeletal remains of the Wehrmacht. Everyone knew it was over, except the fanatics who still believed in a miracle that would never come. Captain Hargrove was 32 years old. He landed at Normandy, survived the Bulge, and watched too many boys die in the snow. His eyes had that hollow look you see in men who stopped counting the dead. He commanded a rifle company tasked with clearing small towns ahead of the main advance. Standard procedure: knock on doors, check basements, move forward. Repeat until the war ends or you don't. On March 14th, his company entered a village called Rothmühl, population 300, maybe. It was one of those places that didn't matter to anyone except the people who lived there. Narrow streets, stone houses with red tile roofs, a church with a cracked bell that hadn't rung in months. The kind of place that would have been peaceful if the world hadn't gone insane. But Rothmühl was different. Hargrove felt it the moment they entered. The streets were too quiet. Not abandoned quiet, watching quiet. His men spread out in formation, rifles raised, boots crunching on broken glass. Every window felt like it was hiding something. Every shadow felt wrong. Then they heard it. A child crying. Faint. Coming from the church. Hargrove signaled his men to hold. He approached alone, pushing open the heavy wooden door. The hinges screamed. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of damp stone and candle wax. Rows of pews stretched toward an altar draped in dust. And there, kneeling in front of the pulpit, was a German officer. He wasn't armed. His hands were raised, palms open. His uniform was clean, too clean for a war that had turned everything to mud and ash. He was younger than Hargrove expected, maybe 28. Blonde hair, sharp features, the kind of face that belonged on a recruitment poster. But his eyes were different. They weren't cold, they were terrified. Hargrove raised his rifle. The German didn't move. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the child crying, echoing from somewhere deeper in the church. Then the German spoke in perfect English. "I need your help." Hargrove didn't lower his weapon. He'd heard plenty of Germans beg for their lives. This wasn't that. This was something else. The man's voice wasn't pleading. It was desperate, yes, but also calm, like he'd already made peace with whatever happened next. "I'm Oberleutnant Friedrich Weiss. I'm not asking you to spare me. I'm asking you to spare them." Hargrove's finger tightened on the trigger. Spare who? Weiss gestured toward the back of the church, where a stone staircase descended into darkness. He could hear them now, the soft shuffle of feet, whispered prayers, the breathing of 300 people trying to stay silent while the world decided their fate. He turned back to Weiss. "Why are you telling me this? You could have run. You could have let us find them on our own." Weiss met his eyes. "Because if you find them without knowing, your men will panic. They'll think it's an ambush. People will die. And if I run, the SS will find them first. Either way, they're dead. Unless you help me. Help you how? Let me surrender to you, officially. Take me as your prisoner. Then, when the SS arrives, you tell them the town is under American control, that the civilians are your prisoners, not mine. They won't challenge you. Not with the war this close to over. They'll leave. And everyone lives. Hargrove felt his chest tighten. This wasn't a battlefield decision. This was politics. This was treason, depending on who you asked. If he agreed and word got out, he'd be court-martialed. If he refused, 300 people would burn. And what happens to you? Weiss smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I'm a dead man either way, Captain. The only question is whether I die alone or with them. Hargrove looked at the stairs again. Somewhere down there, a child was breathing, waiting, trusting that the world still had room for mercy. He looked back at Weiss. When do the SS arrive? Sunset. Hargrove checked his watch. 5 hours. He exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the decision settle on top of his shoulders like a uniform he couldn't take off. All right, here's what we're going to do.
The plan was simple. Too simple. The kind of simple that only works if everyone plays their part perfectly and nobody asks the wrong questions. Hargrove didn't like it, but he didn't have a better option. First, Weiss would formally surrender. Hargrove would place him under armed guard, visible to anyone watching. Then, Hargrove's men would secure the church and the surrounding buildings, establishing a perimeter that looked official, military, untouchable. When the SS arrived, Hargrove would meet them at the edge of town, in full uniform with his best poker face, and sell the lie that Rothmühl was now an American-held position. The civilians were enemy detainees. The town was off limits. End of story. If the SS believed him, they'd leave. If they didn't, people would die. Possibly including Hargrove and his men. Weiss was taken into custody without resistance. Hargrove's soldiers didn't understand why their captain was being so formal with a single unarmed German, but they followed orders. They always did. Hargrove posted guards at the church entrance and sent runners to bring the rest of his company into town. Within 2 hours, Rothmühl looked like an occupied village. American flags, sentries, sandbag positions. It was a stage, and everyone was an actor. But the real work happened below ground. Hargrove descended into the catacombs with a flashlight and a translator. The air was cold, damp, thick with the smell of earth and fear. The people were pressed together in the darkness, families holding each other, old men with hollow cheeks, mothers clutching children who didn't understand why they had to be so quiet. Their eyes followed him like he was either a savior or an executioner. They didn't know which yet. Neither did he. Through the translator, Hargrove explained the situation. He told them to stay hidden, stay silent, and trust that this would work. Some nodded, some wept. One old woman reached out and touched his hand, her grip weak but steady, and whispered something in German he didn't need translated. It was gratitude. Or maybe a prayer. He wasn't sure there was a difference anymore. By 4 o'clock, the town was as ready as it would ever be. Hargrove stood at the churchyard, smoking a cigarette he didn't want, watching the road. Weiss sat nearby, wrists bound, guarded by 2 privates who kept glancing at him like he might explode. The German hadn't spoken since surrendering. He just stared at the horizon, waiting. At 5:47 p.m., the SS arrived. 3 vehicles, a Kübelwagen and 2 trucks filled with soldiers, maybe 20 men total. They stopped at the edge of town, engines idling, and an officer stepped out. Tall, thin, iron cross on his chest, the kind of man who looked at the world like it owed him an explanation. Hargrove walked forward to meet him, slowly, confidently, like he owned the ground he was standing on. He kept his rifle slung across his back, one hand resting casually on his belt, unthreatened, in control. The SS officer looked him up and down, then spoke in clipped, accented English. "You're American. Captain James Hargrove, 3rd Army, and you're in the wrong place." The officer's jaw tightened. "This town is German territory. You have no authority here." Hargrove gestured behind him, toward the flags, the sentries, the sandbags. "Looks pretty American to me. We took this position 3 hours ago. No resistance. You're welcome to check with command if you want, but I'm guessing you're not here on official business." The SS officer's eyes flickered with something sharp. Anger, maybe. Or calculation. "Where are the civilians?" "Secured. Church catacombs. We're processing them as detainees. Standard procedure." "I want to see them." "No." The word hung in the air like a blade. The SS officer stepped closer, his voice dropping to something colder. "You are harboring enemies of the Reich. There are consequences for that." Hargrove didn't flinch. "The war's over, friend. You just don't know it yet. In 2 weeks, maybe 3, your Reich won't exist. But today, right now, this town is mine. And if you try to enter it, my men have orders to open fire. You can test that if you want, but I'm guessing you've got better things to do than die in a place nobody's ever heard of." For a long moment, neither man moved. The soldiers in the trucks watched. Hargrove's men watched. Somewhere behind them, 300 people held their breath. Then the SS officer smiled. It was thin, humorless. The smile of a man who'd lost, but wouldn't admit it. "You will regret this, Captain." "Maybe, but not today." The officer turned, climbed back into his vehicle, and barked an order. The engines roared. The convoy turned around and disappeared down the road, leaving nothing but dust and the fading growl of machinery. Hargrove stood there until the sound was gone. Then he exhaled, long and slow, and walked back toward the church. His hands were shaking. He shoved them into his pockets so no one would see. Weiss was still sitting in the churchyard watching him. Their eyes met. Hargrove nodded once. Weiss nodded back. The people in the catacombs were brought up that night, blinking in the fading light like they'd been resurrected from the grave. Hargrove's men distributed rations, blankets, water. Some of the villagers cried. Some just stared. One little girl, maybe 6 years old, walked up to Hargrove and handed him a small cross. She didn't say anything. She just smiled and ran back to her mother. Hargrove kept that cross in his pocket for the rest of the war. 2 days later, Hargrove's company moved on. Weiss was transferred to a POW camp in France. They never spoke again. The official reports made no mention of Rothmühl, no mention of the SS, no mention of the deal. It was just another town cleared without incident, another footnote in a war full of them. But years later, after the war ended, after the trials and the rebuilding and the forgetting, a letter arrived at Hargrove's home in Pennsylvania. It was postmarked from Germany. Inside was a photograph. A group of children standing in front of a rebuilt church. On the back, written in careful English, "They remember." Hargrove never told anyone what happened in Rothmühl. Not his wife, not his children, not the reporters who occasionally asked about his service. He carried it alone, the way soldiers carry all the things that don't fit into stories. But the letter stayed with him, and so did the cross. Because some debts can't be repaid, some choices can't be undone, and some truths are too dangerous to speak out loud. But they're still true. And maybe that's enough. In 2003, a memorial was erected in Rothmühl, a simple stone marker with 312 names. At the bottom in small letters it reads, "Saved by courage, remembered by grace." Friedrich Weiss died in 1982. James Hargrove, died in 1991. Neither man ever spoke publicly about what they did. But the children they saved grew up. They had children of their own, and those children had children. And somewhere in Germany, there are people alive today who owe their existence to a choice made in a ruined church by two men who should have been enemies. History doesn't record the deal. The files were lost or maybe never written, but the truth is still there, buried beneath the floorboards of memory, waiting for someone to find it. This is that truth, and now you know it too.